The aspect ratio is basically how the pixels are arranged in an image, the vertical units by the horizontal units. So for instance, 4:3, which is used for standard definition recording, would mean that for every 4 units there are horizontally, there would be 3 units vertically. And for 16:9, which is standard for high definition, obviously would mean for every 16 units there are horizontally, there would be 9 units vertically. These units could be anything from inches to centimeters to pixels. There are many ways you could arrange pixels, but the only two you need to worry about are 4:3 for standard definition and 16:9 for high definition. It works like this. Picture your camcorder lens capturing an image. Your lens is round, right? And you will never find a picture that is round. It's either square or rectangle shaped. That is because your pixels are arranged in a certain shape in the lens. 4:3 captures your image like this, and 16:9 captures your image like this. It's as simple as that. It's always best to play your video in the same aspect ratio that you record it in, or you may lose image quality. If you try and squeeze 16:9 image into a 4:3 screen, it will letterbox, or it will be stretched and the sides will be clipped. And if you try and fit a 4:3 image into a 16:9 screen, it will end up having pillars on the sides, or it will be stretched to fit, and you will lose image quality. Okay, now for image resolution. This is basically the image quality, which is really the amount of pixels that make up a full frame. Pixels are the smallest single component of a digital image. The more pixels you use in an image, the more it resembles the original. The amount of pixels stacked together is known as the resolution. Pixels are arranged in vertical lines, the first number, and horizontal lines, the second number. Standard definition PAL uses 720 by 576, which is equal to 414,720 pixels. These are simply the amount of pixels in a full frame, whereas NTSC is 720 by 480, which is equals to 345,600 pixels. As you can see, PAL has a higher resolution. Standard definition widescreen uses the same amount of pixels. They are only stretched to fit on the screen, which ultimately can reduce the image quality. High definition resolutions are generally anything above that, starting at 1280 by 720. The most popular video resolutions are these. First off, there are standard definition resolutions, and they are 4:3 ratios. NTSC 720 by 480 and PAL 720 by 576. Then the next are high definition resolutions and are all widescreen or 16:9 ratios. There is 1280 by 720, 1440 by 1080, and 1920 by 1080, which is considered to be full high definition. The rest are either stretched or letterboxed. There are higher resolutions than these available. As a matter of fact, they can go up to 4096 by 2048, which boasts more than 8.3 million pixels, also known as 4K footage. But for online video, this will not concern you, as this is just too much for general computers to process and upload, and a camcorder that records this will set you back around $25,000. So when looking for a camcorder, the resolutions are usually depicted by the horizontal pixels. Standard definition camcorders will almost always be interlaced. 1280 by 720 camcorders will almost always be progressive scan and is labeled 720p. It's hard to tell the next two apart in quality, but 1440 by 1080 and 1920 by 1080 will come in either progressive scan or interlaced, and will be labeled either 1080i for interlaced or 1080p for progressive scan. Data compression. Okay, now this is where a lot of people seem to get confused when it comes to choosing a camcorder. So now I'm going to simplify this for you in easy to understand terms. So let's start with codecs. You may or may not have heard this term before, but it's simply short for compression, decompression. You see, video files contain a huge amount of information, and in order to store this information effectively, it has to be made smaller by compressing the files. Decompressing reverses this process, making the files able to be viewed as video. So, when it's compressed, it's stuffed into a small container, making it easier to be moved around. Some containers are smaller than others, whilst some containers are easier to use than others. Make sense? Here are some of the more popular containers, and I will explain these in more detail later in this course. For video, there is MPEG-2, the first standardized video format, originally used for DVDs. MPEG-4, also known as AVCHD or H.264, which has become the industry standard at the present. Flash, also known as .FLV or .F4V, developed by Adobe and is the most widely used format online. Flash also supports MPEG-4. QuickTime, also known as .MOV, developed by Apple. This is the original MPEG-4. Windows Media, .WMV or .AVI, developed by Microsoft. And then there is audio, MP3, AAC or WAV. There are loads more that I could mention, but there is really no reason. These are the only ones you need to worry about right now for web video. You see, video codecs can become very technical. There are about 50 different containers and ways to compress and view video. But going into that can be a can of worms and will only confuse the hell out of you. So, modern day camcorders will usually compress video into one of these three formats: AVI, MPEG-2 or MP4. Now you need to understand that the more uncompressed your footage, the easier it is to edit. The more compressed your footage, the easier it is to move around. The more compressed your video, the more power you need to edit your video, which means more memory and a faster processor. AVI is the least compressed of these and is generally only used on standard definition camcorders. Then there is MPEG-2, which can also be used for high definition and is perfect for quick editing, especially if you have a slower computer. My recommendation is to try and stick to a camcorder that uses less compression like MPEG-2. This makes editing a whole lot easier, especially when considering you will be turning your final product into an MP4 later. But if you decide to go with an AVCHD camcorder, make sure it has the AVCHD logo printed on it and that your computer can handle this process.